Now, the professionals in charge of risk management, the global reinsurance industry, are still trying to assess the likely costs of this year's extreme Atlantic hurricane season. The fear among some risk assessors is that climate change means some assets may become uninsurable in the future. The risk is that extreme weather means claims will rise faster than expected and that premiums won't be adequate to cover the shortfall. In the insurance world, that's known as the protection gap. Hurricane Maria has left behind widespread damage. It hit Puerto Rico as a Category 4 storm, causing widespread flooding and tidal surges. Andy Gallagher reports now from the capital, San Juan.
Puerto Rico's southeast coast was the first to feel the effects of Hurricane Maria, but the entire country is now dealing with the aftermath of one of the most powerful storms to ever hit this island. With winds of 250 kilometers per hour, Puerto Rico was pounded for most of Wednesday. In San Juan, hurricane-force winds ripped off roofs and blew out windows. Power has now been lost across the entire island. Puerto Rico's ailing electricity grid is still recovering from Hurricane Irma. It could be months before it's restored.
The Puerto Rico and the San Juan that we knew yesterday is no longer there. So we have to reconstruct, rebuild, reinvent it. We have to be resilient, and we have to push on, if not with our bodies, with our hearts and with our soul.
Puerto Rico has long been spared from a direct hit, as hurricanes tend to veer either south or north of the island. The last direct hit from a Category 4 hurricane was decades ago. The nearby US Virgin Islands also took a direct hit, with many residents leaving before Maria arrived.
I'm trying to figure out where I was going to stay in Puerto Rico, and I think a lot of other people were in the same boat. I mean, you had everybody leaving from the BVI, people leaving from the USVI, but I'm glad to be in Miami now.
Widespread flooding is now a concern, as are mudslides in the island's mountainous regions. The governor of Puerto Rico has now put a curfew in place as a rescue and recovery operation is launched. With little communication, it's hard to assess the damage, but it may be this island's coastal communities and rural communities that took the worst of the damage. As Hurricane Maria leads a path of destruction across Puerto Rico, the recovery in this US territory, already dealing with so many challenges, could be a long one.
Joining us now from Zurich is Peter Zimmerlin. Peter's an expert in storms and hurricanes and heads the Atmospheric Perils Department with Zurich-based reinsurance company Swiss Re. What a great name, Peter, for a department. You'd be the man to ask then, are weather-related catastrophes on the increase right now?
Thanks very much, first of all, for having me on the show. Yes, this is a question that we are confronted with very often right now. Are these storms on the increase? Now, for one particular event, it's always very difficult to say what is the contribution of any effects like global warming. But one thing that we have observed, there are three important components: sea surface temperatures, then the humidity that is in the atmosphere, and the sea levels. And all of these three components that are very important, have played a big role in all these events that we've seen, are on the rise. That's at least what the predictions say, in a warmer world due to global warming.
OK, now as far as your industry is concerned, does climate change mean that some assets are now becoming uninsurable? How big is the protection gap that we're seeing right now?
I do not think that assets are becoming uninsurable due to that. I think there is enough capital available that can be utilized in order to protect these risks. So the reason for a protection gap lies in other areas, really.
Have insurance companies like yours been preparing? I mean, obviously, you must have been preparing, I'm guessing, for climate change, the impact of storms like the current Atlantic season we're seeing at the moment.
Yes, so of course, preparing is a very important part, right? And it's really at the core of the business that we are doing. So preparing means we need to have adequate capital. We need to have enough money to be prepared to pay out in case such events happens. That's very clear. In terms of very short-term preparations, right now, when these events are really unfolding, obviously we're in close contact with our clients and their brokers, and try to reach out and see in what way we can support them.
Peter, given that climate change is happening, there's very little doubt now. Scientists tell us that climate is changing. How is your industry changing and adapting?
We have to clearly keep very much aware of what science tells us how global warming will impact the frequency and also the intensity in particular of natural catastrophes. And all the big reinsurers really do have that on their priority list in order to be aware and anticipate changes that are going to happen. One thing to be aware of is that our industry operates very much on a yearly or maybe 2 or 3 year cycle where we renew our contract. So we do have the capability to react fairly quickly to changes that are happening.
Peter, it's been really good to talk to you on Counting the Cost. Many thanks indeed for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.